Have you ever had one of those moments where you just snap? Maybe you're sitting in brutal traffic, or you're stuck in a highly stressful meeting, or worst of all, you're in a heated argument with someone you really care about. In that split second, let's be honest, you didn't choose your reaction. Your reaction chose you. And man, it is just a chaotic, exhausting way to live, isn't it? Just constantly riding this roller coaster of totally unregulated reactions. But what if you could just step off the ride? What if you could actually flip the script so that instead of your emotions driving you, you drive them? Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to literally unpack the architecture of your own mind. Today, we're diving deep into a profoundly transformative framework straight from PMI Science University. And the core thesis for this explainer is simple, but honestly, it's pretty radical. Your emotions, they are not who you are. They're really just information. And emotional mastery isn't some kind of mystical gift that you have to be born with. It's a deliberate, conscious decision that every single one of us can make, starting right now.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, decoding anatomy, 2, hidden forces, 3, dark patterns, 4, mastery tools, and 5, true freedom. Let's get right into it.
All right, part 1, decoding your emotional anatomy. Now, before we can even begin to manage our feelings, we really have to understand the sheer scale and the biological reality of what an emotion actually is. Take a look at the complete PMA Human Emotion System map. What we typically think of as an emotion, a smile, a shout, a tear, that's literally just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that surface-level behavior is this massive, multi-layered system. It involves our neurology, our psychological drivers, a communication translation layer, and our physical nervous system. So every single time you feel something, your entire biological and psychological machinery is lighting up like a Christmas tree. To actually make sense of this massive machine, we have to look at the foundational building blocks. And according to the pioneering work of psychologist Paul Ekman, which, by the way, is totally foundational to the PMA Science University framework, our emotional anatomy is built on 6 core universal emotions. We're talking anger, fear, sadness, joy, disgust, and surprise. And it doesn't matter where you're from in the world, these 6 core emotions shape every human experience. I like to think of them as the primary colors of your emotional palette. Basically, every complex feeling you ever have is just a mix of these 6 basics. Moving right along to part 2, the hidden forces within. So why do these core emotions trigger in the first place? Well, behind every single emotion is a human need. In this explainer, we're highlighting 5 fundamental drives: safety, love and belonging, significance, autonomy, and growth. And this is just an incredibly powerful concept to wrap your head around. Think about it. All of your emotional pain, your anger, your fear, your sadness, it all stems from one or more of these deep human needs being threatened or left unmet. On the flip side, when these needs are met, that's what creates inner peace and joy. So if you feel sudden anger at work, stop and ask yourself, is my autonomy being threatened right now? Or is my significance being questioned? These needs basically play out in our daily lives as an emotional energy system. Try thinking of your inner state like a battery that's constantly shifting based on 4 distinct zones. First, you've got energy drains. These are toxic environments or negativity that just completely deplete you. Then you have energy leaks. These are things like your unresolved fears or lingering guilt. But then you have the positives, right? You have energy builds, which are fueled by your passionate purpose and growth. And finally, energy protects, which are your personal boundaries and discipline. Ultimately, your dominant emotional state is simply the mathematical result of how you manage these 4 slices of the pie. Which brings us to part 3, confronting the dark patterns. All right, this is where we really have to be brutally honest with ourselves about what happens when our emotional battery gets drained. Because when we don't deal with our core emotions, what do? We suppress them. But here's the thing, they don't just magically disappear. They mutate into what the framework calls a shadow expression. For instance, suppressed anger doesn't go away, it ferments into toxic resentment. Unprocessed sadness, that hardens into depression. Ignored fear just becomes this constant, vibrating background anxiety. Even suppressed joy can turn into a hollow emptiness. And unvoiced desire becomes bitter frustration. You simply cannot cheat the system. And that brings us to this absolutely crucial, frankly kind of haunting warning drawn straight from the framework. What you suppress will express elsewhere. Let me say that again. What you suppress will express elsewhere. It's essentially a law of psychological physics. You can push it down today, sure, but it will violently resurface tomorrow. Maybe in your relationships, maybe in your physical health, or maybe in your career. Hiding emotions only creates internal pressure, and eventually, that pressure cooker is going to explode. Okay, let's pivot to the solutions in part 4, tools for emotional mastery. So, how do we actually stop that explosion? Well, the absolute bedrock of emotional discipline comes directly from Stoic philosophy: accept what you cannot control. I know, it sounds super simple, but it's an incredible pattern interrupt when you find yourself spiraling out. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion. No, the Stoic masters it by focusing strictly on what is within their power. You cannot control the traffic, you can't control what your coworker said, but you have 100% control over how you respond to it. This stoic bedrock builds into our ultimate advantage, emotional intelligence, or EQ. Take a look at the core elements here. Notice how the first three, self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation, are entirely internal. You have to understand and regulate yourself internally before you can ever hope to unlock the outer elements, which are empathy and social skills. And honestly, this is exactly why EQ is far more important than IQ when it comes to success and leadership. Because if you can't lead yourself, you are never going to deeply connect with or lead others. It's just a fact. To fuel that emotional intelligence, we apply the PMA principles. That's positive mental attitude. We're looking at optimism, gratitude, resilience, self-belief, and discipline. Applying these principles acts as a literal filter for your mind. It actively trains your brain to notice the good, to bounce back stronger, and to actually see opportunities hiding inside challenges. Having a positive mental attitude absolutely doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means using discipline to turn potential emotional failures into literal fuel for your own personal growth.
And now we reach the final stage, part 5, the path to true freedom.
Now that we have our tools, it's time to put them into practice. The framework lays out this really explicit step-by-step transformation journey. And no, you cannot skip to the end. First up is awareness, actually seeing your emotions clearly in the moment. Step 2 is acceptance, allowing them to exist without judging yourself for them. Step 3 is understanding, finding that root cause, those unmet needs we talked about earlier. Step 4 is release, just letting go of what no longer serves you. Step 5 is realignment, rebuilding your beliefs and habits. And finally, step 6, mastery. This is where you evolve from simply reacting to things to consciously directing your life. So the really crucial point to grasp here is this: freedom is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over it. This is such a massive misconception. Achieving emotional mastery doesn't mean you somehow become this cold, numb robot who never feels anger or sadness again. It means you still feel those things deeply, but you confidently direct where that energy goes. You use the anger to set a healthy boundary. You use the sadness to connect more deeply with someone you love. See the difference? To make this a daily reality, the PMA Science University framework gives us the integration system. Think of this as the ultimate human mastery formula that elegantly combines literally everything we've talked about today into one powerful equation. It goes like this: awareness plus understanding plus regulation plus discipline plus purpose equals emotional mastery. It's an equation, so if you're missing just one of these variables, like say you have total awareness but zero discipline, the whole thing falls apart. But when you integrate all of them daily, you become completely unstoppable.
And why do we go through all this hard work? Because of the beautiful end state of this journey. The ultimate goal is inner peace, just an unshakable calm. It's clarity, the ability to make really clear decisions totally free from emotional static. It's freedom, breaking the chains of emotional slavery. And lastly, it's purpose, living a life of real meaning and impact. Because by mastering your inner world, you fundamentally shape your destiny and the legacy you leave behind in the outer world.
So, look, we've mapped out the anatomy, we've exposed the dark patterns, and we've handed you the ultimate formula for integration. You now know the path to mastery. But as we all know, knowledge isn't enough. The question I want to leave you with today is, are you actually ready to take the first step? Are you ready to stop letting your reactions write your story and finally take the pen back? The choice, as always, is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.